And it's easy to say, hard to do. I've really struggled over time to let go and allow my talented people to do what it is that they do best. But the business will fail if I don't, because I can't anymore.
Welcome to the Sinclair podcast, where we share real-world experiences, wisdom, and the honest struggles of entrepreneurs to help you navigate and scale your business with confidence.
Steve, man, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I've been looking forward to this for a while. You and I go back, like 7-8 years? We were talking earlier. Jesse Vidal, probably our mutual introduction, right. And several people on the way. And I'll never forget, probably early on when you opened up the office in Welland, just going through, and it was actually the inspiration for our office. So the 2-level, because that wasn't done in Niagara. And, right. At the second level, it was just a cool space, had a great vibe, the old bank, and you guys are still there today. Head office. We're
still there. We've expanded it quite considerably and kept that same kind of principle, trying to create a beautiful and clean and exciting space to live and work. I've always been of the mindset that a clean and beautiful office space is a clean and beautiful mind. It sort of sets a standard of how we think and how we do business. And so you want it to be a place that you're proud to be at and proud to be a part of. Your space dictates how you feel and think.
Yeah, it had that. We totally ripped it off, did the second level.
That's right.
So thanks for the inspo. Yeah. You've been a disruptor in the insurance industry for better part of 10 years? How long has the company been going?
The company's been going for 12 years now, and certainly the last 6 we really found our stride, and we started to disrupt the business.
I'm excited for the listeners to be able to hear some of that story. But before we get too deep on that, take me back, born and raised in Niagara. Tell me a little bit about childhood for you growing up.
Well, yeah, born and raised in Niagara, grew up in Welland, Ontario, which is where my business is headquartered now.
That's awesome.
Got a wonderful family. Mom and dad were business people their entire lives, and certainly taught me a lot, learned a lot from them and their business operations. Played golf as a youngster, and it's been a big part of my life as I've went through leading into my insurance career.
That's awesome. And we're going to talk about your golf game because, as I said, you're one of those guys I hate. You go out and play every 6 weeks and still shoot 68. I'm like, God damn, you're natural talent, but you got the reps in. Tell me about your first entrepreneurial experience, the first job, or what was that experience for you?
Well, my first job was picking balls on the driving range at Peninsula Lakes Golf Club. My uncle was the golf pro there, and at the time, and so what I used to do was, instead of, I was supposed to drive around that little car that you take to pick up the balls, but I'd show up early for work with a pitching wedge, and I'd chip every ball into one circle on the green. And so if there was 500, 1,000 balls out there, I'd chip them all into one spot, and then I'd just drive the cart over and pick them all up.
Your short game's so damn good.
And so I think I developed some hands there.
I guess
doing
so.
that in that process, and then so that was my first job.
Right on. And you spent some time in the golf industry. How long did you work there for?
Well, those were my early days as a junior. I worked it up from the range to the pro shop, and then eventually my father built a golf club, Hunters Point Golf Club in Welland, and so I became part of that family business. And for many years, I was the general manager of our family's business, which was a lot of fun. And I cut my teeth in a very difficult business, a difficult business at a difficult time as well. At that time. And that was just after 2001. We used to receive a lot of American business, and it was post-SARS, it was post-9/11 when the golf business changed. And so all of a sudden, this idea of a fun golf course to run, an interesting enterprise, became a really difficult business. And so my father and I worked very hard to make that business successful over the years, and it was a big challenge. But I think that cut my teeth in business. And then when I finally got into the insurance business many years later, I was armed I was battle hardened by that business.
Yeah, no doubt. What were some of the lessons learned from your parents along the way?
So my parents, most of what I know about business beyond my education, I learned from my folks. And my dad is a notoriously big thinker. And in fact, the company, Big, and our tagline, Think Big, largely is inspired by my dad. He came up with the name, and the concept of Think Big really is what he's all about. Almost to a point that it annoys me. He'll think of some big, outrageous idea, and I'll roll my eyes. And I like to think I'm a big thinker. I'll roll my eyes and think, okay, Dad, you're close, but your head's in the clouds. And then I'll wait a few months, or I'll think on it a little while, and I think, darn, he's right. And it happens all the time.
No way.
And even as I was growing this business, my first few years, things really started to take off. And I was sharing with my dad my visions and where it was going to go. And he said, boy, I think you're going to take it here and here and here. And I said, no, Dad, that's not where it's going to go. It's not going to go that big. It's, I'm being reasonable here. And lo and behold, 4 or 5 years later, we got exactly where he said we were going to go, and I didn't see it.
That's incredible.
And so now I've learned to not be so critical when he comes up with what I consider to be a pretty wild idea, because he really has a penchant for it. And I watched him build a business, and I watched him build a golf club and do a lot of great things through his career, and that was always super inspirational for me.
Sounds like he's a mentor of yours.
He is. He definitely is. Yeah. Certainly a source, a big source of trust and support for me and mentorship. And my mom too.
Yeah.
My mom and he together built their insurance business. And, where my dad is the big thinker and the visionary, my mom is the hardest working individual I think I've ever met. She is one of those people that will do whatever it takes to get the job done, short of working her knuckles to the bone. And I watched her do that in business. And so I think I took from the both of them those two opposite effects, the getting in the weeds, doing whatever it takes, pushing yourself to the limit to achieve what you need to achieve, and stepping back and thinking big and having the vision to see where something might go. And so I took those two qualities from both my parents, and I think that served me well. Yeah,
it's a deadly combo. That's incredible.
Yeah, no doubt.
What an awesome experience to be able to have that growing up. Tell me about you mentioned a couple ventures you had in college, university days.
Yeah, so early days. I think some people are born an entrepreneur and some are not. I think that's definitely in my blood, and some things I learned from my parents. Early businesses. My first real business, if you want to call it that, was in early eBay days. At that time I had.
This is what year?
I was probably 18 at this point.
Late 90s.
eBay was just coming onto the scene at that point. And what I discovered was a lot of people didn't know how to use eBay effectively. And so I knew a little bit about the golf business. I knew about golf equipment. I knew what golf equipment was worth. And so I'd find poorly constructed eBay listings for golf equipment. And I'd buy that equipment. I'd buy a Titleist driver that was worth $300 for $100 because the person didn't properly list it. And then I'd receive it. I'd keep it in the box it came in. I'd relist it and list it properly, properly optimize the listing and sell it for $300. And so while I was in university, I made a bunch of money buying and selling golf equipment.
How many listings a week were you doing?
Oh, back then, I don't know, probably 4 or 5, and enough that at that time I didn't need much. So if I made a few $100 here, if I made $1,000 a week, I was doing pretty darn good.
Enough to buy a tab at the bar.
That's right. So
that's incredible.
So that did well, and then that I graduated from that business again, inspired by eBay. At that time, you could buy. It was the first time you could really buy anything you wanted to. This was really the early social media days, if you remember, when the world wasn't as connected. When I was 18 years old,
and you're pre-Amazon pre-Amazon, what it is today.
Right. And so I found on eBay an industrial or a commercial grade card printer, one of those things that prints driver's licenses in plastic, beautiful form. And so I was 18 or 17 years old. I was in university in the United States where the drinking age was 21. And so the market opportunity for fake IDs was huge. And so I created a beautiful template, and I figured out how to use the technology of this machine, and I started printing off fake IDs for all my friends and charged a reasonable sum.
What were you charging?
And I was $100 for a fake ID and $50 if you lost it and needed a replacement. And so it was a bit of a recurring revenue system that occurred there. And so I sold a bunch of those. Luckily never got caught.
Yeah.
And that was probably my most successful early enterprise. That made
margins
golf club
deadly in that.
Way better than golf club sales. Yeah, it was far better. So fortunately,
awesome.
Once I passed 21, the market dried up, and that was the end of it.
Oh man, that's incredible. Yeah, I mean, you obviously it was in your blood. You're to have the insight and the wherewithal to do those things so early on. An entrepreneur through and through. So let's talk about Billyard Insurance Group. You set out with a goal of what? Where were you going to take the company when you opened up? You had a vision.
Originally, the vision was far smaller. At the time, I was managing a hotel in Revelstoke, British Columbia, playing a ski bum most days, and I ran out of money. I basically was broke.
How long were you out there for?
3 or 4 years back then, back in my late 20s.
Okay.
And that was after I'd been in the golf business for many years, sort of escaped out west, and frankly had no plan of ever returning to Ontario. I thought west was it for me. And then, like many people who go west, I ran out of money. I couldn't find a good job in Revelstoke. I was managing this hotel. It wasn't paying me much. And I thought, okay, is this going to be am I going to be here forerever? Is this what I'm going to do? Am I going to be the
because you probably see the people around you that you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to be that guy or girl at 50, doing this thing.
I want to do something. So the opportunity came up to come back and do something in this insurance space. And so I came up with a simple plan, and I had a number in mind. I had this is how much money I think I need to make to be successful, and then I'm going to come back to Revelstoke, and I'm going to go skiing. And
that's great.
There was a lesson I learned there about that kind of approach along the way, which was that's a fool's errand, setting a number that you think you want to earn, because you're going to approach it and then you're going to double it. And then you're going to approach that and you're going to double it again. And so that it's all part of the game. And I've changed how I see those things now. But at the time, I had this number, I hit the number, and then I kept at it. And like I said, kept going. And then that became a memory after that. And the business turned into something bigger than I ever really imagined.
Going back to when you were out there, did you feel at all any pressure from your parents, being like very successful entrepreneurs, driven people, that, hey, you know, you're out there kind of being a ski bum?
I don't think so. Maybe they could have applied a little more pressure. I think there was a stage where they were worried about me. They weren't sure if I was going to. Are you okay? Yeah. Well, you seem to have a lot of potential, but you're squandering it, sort of thing. Yeah. But no, they didn't ever really put a lot of pressure on me. They were always just supportive. I think they expected a lot of me, and I felt that expectation, and I think in a good way that it motivated me to do things. Like, I always wanted to be successful for my family and for my parents, and I wanted to follow in their footsteps. I saw what that looked like. I think when you're fortunate enough to have successful parents and parents who are driven and creating things, you just assume you're going to do it. And I always just knew that I was going to do something, and I wasn't thinking about it until I really came under pressure, and I said, "Oh, here I am in Revelstoke, and I have no money."
Now
I had to wake up and do something. It was like, "Ooh, okay, now it's time." So I needed that little nudge, and desperation is an incredible motivator.
So why insurance? I mean, family business,
but family business. My parents were in it for many years, and I'd watched them build a business, and I watched them sell a business. And I thought I could do it too. And, you know, obviously the help of them having been in this business for so long, they had connections in the industry, our family name meant something in the business, and that allowed me to really get in the door in a lot of the places I needed to grow that business. So that foundation was a great start. And like I said, it was also choosing a business that the sky was the limit. You know, you can build a retail store, and you're subject to how many customers you can get in the door. You can build a restaurant, and you're subject to how many plates of pasta you can serve. The insurance business had a market capitalization that's enormous here in Canada. If you wanted to build, I think it's 15, 20 billion. I don't even know. It's massive. Yeah. So there's a lot of business out there on the street. And so the business could be built as big as I wanted it to be built, and I could scale it. And I also felt that it was a business that was ripe for disruption.
Really?
It has been largely operated by an aging population of brokers in the industry who weren't making the necessary investments to grow their businesses. They made a lot of money over the years, and then the business was slow. It wasn't evolving technologically. And so to come into this business and see nothing but opportunity really excited me. And then that created an enormous potential.
At that point, what would be the average size of company? Like, how many staff? What sort of volume are they doing? Like, because obviously there's a range, but what would the general makeup be?
Yeah, I think funny. There was numbers that came out recently in our Industries Association's publication, and I think the average brokerage was 10 to 12 people. 10 to 12 people and $10 to $15 million of GWP.
And it's the small town insurance company. They're servicing locally only. It's they're giving back. It's the mom and pop shop.
And that's changing a lot in our business now. Partially because there has been an era of young entrepreneurs like myself that have come in and grown their businesses, and partially because of consolidation. You know, over the last number of years, there's been a lot of big consolidators out there with a lot of money behind them, private equity and insurance company money, and they're buying up all those smaller shops and consolidating them into much larger operations. And it is often the exit strategy for a lot of those, as you call them, mom and pop shops. It's time to move the business. If you don't have any children that want to take that forward, you sell to one of the big consolidators, and away you go.
And safe to assume the multiples are higher now on the exit than ever before, or than especially 12 years ago when you started?
They are. I think everybody's waiting for it to turn in the other direction, but they've gone up and up and up over the years to a point where sometimes you wonder about the viability of some of these acquisitions.
Sure.
And we don't do acquisitions. So we're strictly an organically growing business. And that's one of the things that makes us very unique. Most of in fact, I would hasten to say, all of the fastest growing and largest brokerages in the country right now have achieved that through mergers and acquisitions. And very few have built the muscle necessary to truly grow in an organic fashion.
So let's talk about that. You came up with this model that, you know, some might look saying, well, that's not that original, but for your industry, it was so unique. And you totally disrupted it. When did you come up with the idea? And at that point, did you think it was going to work?
It wasn't the original plan for the business. So what I had imagined was, at that time, digital disruption. So I thought if I can go digital marketing, digital enablement, technology, software development, if I can build a brokerage on that principle, then I can scale a business. And And what I found to that was enormous limitations to be able to scaling a business as a single enterprise. I had to be able to recruit talent. That was slow and expensive. I had to be able to retain that talent. I had to make sure that I had a value proposition that was compelling enough to attract the best brokers in the business. And even with a good tech proposition, that's not necessarily enough.
Yeah.
And I sort of stumbled into the opportunity to grow the business under a branch office model as I did. And that was a young producer that I'd worked with had come to me with thoughts of leaving me because he wanted to go start a business with a friend who was hoping to start up their own brokerage.
Okay.
And it was a group actually of young entrepreneurial guys who wanted to do their own thing. And thought they'd go down the road to make that happen. And so this producer of mine put me together with them, and over a couple beers and on a cocktail napkin, we sketched up a framework of what made sense for them to start their own branch under my umbrella. I could provide them with the expertise and the technology, the licensing, the market access, everything they needed to make their business successful. And so we sketched that out, we launched, they opened up a business, and 3 to 6 months in, it was obvious it was going to be a success. They were hungry entrepreneurs. They knew their business. They were young. They knew what they wanted to do. And they became very successful very quick. And then 3 months later, I got a call from someone else, just like them, who knew them, and said, hey, if you did that with them, would you consider doing that with me?
Really?
And so I opened up my second location.
So it wasn't after the first one, you didn't say, let's go, put gas on this and just
That
go.
wasn't yet, I wasn't yet the thing.
organic.
It happened. And then a third called, and that's when I realized, okay, we have an opportunity here. There's
here.
no shortage of young entrepreneurs with a whole lot of talent and a whole lot of energy who want to do something more than just become a sales broker for a guy like me or someone else. They wanted to build something. And then at that time, I invited my now COO, Cody Duma, to join me. He joined as our director of business development at the time. And he and I built a business plan to open 15 offices in 5 years. And that was our goal. And it turned out in 3 years, we'd opened over 80. And that's how quickly that caught fire. And
wow.
it grew faster than we ever expected. And it was because we'd really scratched an itch there that was needed in the insurance industry.
What were some of the challenges along the way? Because that's crazy growth, and that brings a lot of challenges, a lot of great things. But how did you face some of those?
Yeah, what were the challenges? The challenges were all of the challenges, and that's what I find. Every aspect of your business is tested when a business starts to get to scale. And so if you have that 1 in 1,000 problems that at a small business size comes up 1 in 1,000, maybe once a year you deal with it. Yeah. At scale, you're going to be dealing with it 1,000 times. And so everything needs to be tight. So if you have a gap in your contracts, that gap is going to be exposed. If you have a gap in your systems of governance, that gap will be exposed. If your technology infrastructure isn't built to scale, it will collapse. And so we had to excel at every aspect of the business in order to scale that properly. And in fact, one of our company's core values was we build everything to scale. And it was because I knew that if we didn't do that, we would either stall our growth or we would implode upon ourselves. And so we were very thoughtful to build everything. If we can do it one time, that was the ethos I used to say. If we can do this one time, we have to be able to do it 1,000 times. Incredible. And as our business scaled, I probably didn't even think big enough, because as the business scaled, we did have some systems that broke down, because I didn't need to do 1,000 times, I needed to do them 10,000 times. And so technology became a challenge, and processes in our human resources became a challenge. And so we've constantly had to evolve using technological solutions or operational solutions to make us better to manage that scale.
Do you ever have moments along the way where you're, holy shit, I'm in over my head?
Yeah, there's been a few of those along the way.
Or what have I done here?
Very early on, I do actually remember the moment, the first time I really felt that. The company was really exciting for the first 100 employees. And when we passed that 100 threshold, I had a bit of an existential crisis. The business had exceeded my original plans. I had dreams of going back to Revelstoke and being a ski bum. I'd made enough money to go do that. And I also felt I carried very heavily the responsibility that I had to those 100 families that were depending on this business for a paycheck, for their livelihoods, for their careers. And at that time, I felt, I don't know that I want this. I don't know that this is what I had in mind. And there was a bit of an existential crisis, and I did some soul searching on what it is I was doing and why I was doing it. And I evolved, and I decided that I was going to continue to carry this forward, that I wanted to do this, that wasn't a burden to me, it was a privilege. That the responsibility of these people's careers and these families was something that I should consider a privilege, and that I should make the ethos of the company driven to support them. And that drove one of our second core values, which was we take care of our people. And we wanted to build a company that thought very carefully about the impact that everything we did had on our people, for good and for bad. We haven't nailed it every time, but what it did, I think, was create a foundation where the business could truly grow. And it was after that time, we very quickly went from 100 employees to 1,000. It was in the next 3 years that we went from that size to over 1,000, and I think we're now just over 1,200 across the country. And that was a big change, and that responsibility still weighs on me quite heavily.
Yeah, for sure. Going through that kind of growth, it requires getting new talent and people that are thinking different than you. How did you build out the team around you during those years?
I've been very lucky with that. Those people have arrived at my door almost as though the universe delivered them to me.
Some gifts.
And I think that we were fortunate with that because we did things right. We tried to build a great business. We tried to build a business that people wanted to work in. We tried to do well. We tried to disrupt. We tried to think big. And I think those attributes attract the right kind of people. Certain kind of people are going to see what we're doing and say, I don't want to be a part of that. If you want to come and work at a business where you can punch the clock and come in and go home, you're probably not going to enjoy yourself at big. But if you want to think big, if you want to build stuff, if you want to take on big challenges, this is the spot. And so that has attracted an enormous amount of wonderful people. I can't even count how many. I mean, hundreds, I would say, are people that I'm absolutely inspired by. I can't believe what they're capable of. And the people that support my immediate circle, my executive team, my right and left hands, everybody that's around me, really, every day I'm blown away with what they're capable of accomplishing. Yeah. And it's helped me learn how to take my hand off the wheel a little bit and allow them to take the wheel. And that's something I think any entrepreneur needs to learn how to do. And it's easy to say, hard to do. I've really struggled over time to let go and allow my talented people to do what it is that they do best. But the business will fail if I don't, because I can't anymore. The business is too big.
For sure, and you have to be a different leader to, as you go through those growth models, and the more you build out that team around you. Yeah. Who were you reaching out to, or you mentioned your parents as mentors? Did you hire coaches, or what were you doing to work on you and get the support you needed for that kind of scaling?
I probably didn't do enough of that. I think my dad was my go-to for business conversations, and when I was in a crisis, I'd chat with him. I didn't have a coach, didn't have a mentor. Really was myself and my, at that time, director of business development, now my COO, Cody. Yeah. He and I would work together closely, and he was a great person to keep me accountable. He'd call me out on my bullshit. He had incredible integrity, and so that together we were a good pair as we went through that process. And so my dad, Cody. Things have changed now for me as the business has grown. I have a board of directors now, and I have some real leadership on that front. And one of our board members has become actually a mentor for me, and an executive who'd been a CEO of a major company for many years. And when he's seen it all, and when I think I'm seeing something new for the first time, or a challenge that nobody's ever seen, he's seen it a million times and says, no, here's how I would handle that, or here's a story that I have for a time I've seen that, and that has been immensely valuable for me.
That's amazing. At what point did you say, this business is growing so much? I mean, this requires a massive amount of capital, huge change and huge risk as you're doing that. Yeah. What point did you say, I need to potentially look at outside investment or other ways of doing things, not just you carrying the burden of that?
That happened about 3 years ago when I first woke up to that. And it wasn't even on purpose. At that time, I wasn't really looking. Some investors found me initially. And came to me and opened my eyes to what was possible, how bringing on an investor, a private equity investor or a partner can help you scale the business and build something for the long term. When we passed 600-700 employees, it started to get beyond me a little bit, and I felt very alone in the business at that time, and having a business partner I thought would be very valuable. And so I went through a process to package the business and seek suitors. And it was a very careful and thoughtful process because it wasn't necessarily money we were seeking. I mean, certainly money's part of the equation, but it was about finding the right partner. And when you go through that process and you're introduced to 20 different private equity firms, you get a sense for why some people fear private equity.
Sure.
There are some sharks out there.
Can you sniff it out early on some of those?
You can sniff it out early. Yeah. It's just trying to be authentic about your values, who you are, how you want to run your business, and find the people that are the same way. And I went through that process very carefully. And when I selected the partner that I chose, it was because of that. It wasn't because of the money. It wasn't necessarily because of the deal they wanted to put together or the structure. That was part of it. But the big part was, are these people that I want to be my business partner? Are these people that I can imagine supporting me through the good and the bad? And do they share my vision for where this business is going to go? And I selected a firm, Peloton Capital out of Toronto, that were outstanding people and an outstanding firm. And we shared that value, and it's already proven to be very additive to what it is that we do.
That's incredible. I appreciate you sharing that. Did you know, like looking back, you've got 20 people. Could you identify them early on through that process when you look back to say like they were the one that stood out? Or did you have to go through
You had to go through the process. You had to go through the process.
I say the drop your pants and it's a grueling process from what everyone has told me.
It was incredibly grueling. In fact, at the beginning of the process, one of my advisors told me that it will be a root canal and a CRA audit at the same time.
Sounds incredible.
He said, get ready for that.
Lovely.
And he was right, and it was. And the first stage is part of the process of getting to know your potential investors, and that takes a lot of time. There's a lot of dinners, a lot of steaks, and a lot of wine, and a lot of conversations. And then there's a lot of diligence. They're also getting to know you. They're considering making an investment in a business. They want to know who I am. They want to know who my people are. Yeah. They want to deeply understand the business, and the business is subject to an enormous amount of scrutiny. And so once you get through that first stage and you find a few partners that you might want to dance with, so to speak, now begins the period of diligence. And what you find is that they tear apart and turn over every rock in your business that you've
All
ever
the skeletons.
Every mistake you've made over the last 10 years is going to come to fruition. Every contract that was poorly written, or every shortcut that you might have taken along the way. And so, having survived that, we were really proud at the end of that, because we knew that we'd built a very strong business that stood the test of time. It wasn't perfect, and we learned through that process areas where we can make our business better. But to have someone come in and pick apart everything you've done over the last 10 years is an incredibly stressful and humbling experience. Yeah. But making it through the end of it was very rewarding.
Especially knowing you didn't set up for that. Like, this wasn't a plan. So the things you did early on, I mean, you were doing your best. You were doing what the plan was at that time.
That's right.
Not knowing someone who's going to turn over these rocks later on and go, oh, what happened here? Or what about this? So.
That's right. Yeah, you try to build your business the best you can, and especially when you go from a small business to a big business too, because you can get away with a few mistakes when you're very small. It's impossible to get away with the mistakes when you're very large. And so, post bringing in investors and a board of directors, we've really had to focus on systems of governance and systems of control and ensuring that process documentation and systemization is all in place. And that can sound like a very boring thing for an entrepreneur, because that is the antithesis of entrepreneurialism. I want to shoot from the hip. I want to see opportunities.
Exactly.
I want to take risks, right? And so initially that was a bit of a shock to me. But at the same time, a business at this scale will not survive without that kind of effective management of governance. And so I've seen that as not even as a necessary evil, but as a necessary pleasure, because you're perfecting your business. And when you start to take that approach of, okay, I'm going to build a system that, again, can stand the test of time, and that I know is going to function perfectly every time, and I have regulatory compliance, and I have systems of governance in place, your business becomes stronger. It becomes easier to run. And you become a lot calmer. The stress relieves when you're not putting out fires, when you've got the fire system in place. Yeah. The groundwork is built.
Yeah, for sure. And yes, it sounds boring and incredibly daunting and stuff I wouldn't be interested in. But from again, all I've heard in your story and many others is that that stuff is necessary, building that foundation.
Sure is. Yeah.
During that process, was there moments along the way where you're like, "Fuck, what have I done?" And I don't think I want to do this.
Yes. Yeah, right up to the end. Right up to the end was
right till I signed.
Making the right move. What is this going to do? Is this the right time? There's all those big questions that you have to ask yourself. How am I going to perform under this new environment? And that was the biggest one for me. I'm an entrepreneur. I've never had a boss. And I don't have a boss now. I'm the CEO of the business. But I do have a board of directors.
You didn't have a partner before.
Didn't have a partner.
You did everything.
Nobody to answer to. And so, I'm very glad that I selected the right partners because they're working with me, they're supporting me, it's part of the business. But awesome. I'm not someone who's ever been very good at being told what to do. In fact, through the process, the investors had me complete a psychological analysis. They brought in a professional whose job it was to evaluate potential CEOs who are potential investments for them, and they want to get the profile of the person they're doing business with. I think likely to decide if there's if I'm someone they want to do business with, and one of the principles that they found through this analysis, so they rate you on all these different traits, agreeableness, aggressiveness, all these various things, and one of the categories was called need for freedom. And basically, as it sounds, it's your need to not be told what to do or to be able to make decisions. And I was in the 99th percentile on that chart, right at the top of the list.
They're like, uh-oh.
And so because I've never served well with that. But I think in part the investors also wanted that information because they know how to deal with me. They know how to work with me to get the best outcome from the business. And it was also telling for me because that's not necessarily a trait that I want. I want to be able to play well with others and work. And so there was a lot of learning there about myself through that process, and it's worked really well. I've discovered I went into that with fear, and I came out with confidence and feeling that I have a team behind me. A board of directors isn't something that I answer to. It's something that I work with to support me and make this business better. And every time I walk into a board meeting or I have a consultation with one of our board members, I come out of there with new information, with incredible guidance, and it's just made our business better.
What an incredible experience.
It's been something.
So where do you guys go from here? You've brought an incredible partner on. You've again, I want to go back even and touch on some disruption. And let's be honest, you pissed off a couple people on the way because you were doing things so different. Yeah. So let's go there first. How did that feel? Because that's a lot of pressure again along the way as you're building this thing of like, here they go again, or you become a spotlight in the industry back in the like multiple years ago.
No doubt. We were definitely a disruptor. We definitely moved very fast. Along the way, there were no shortage of naysayers saying that you can't do this, you can't grow that fast, you can't face these challenges, and we took that seriously along the way. I mean, sometimes your greatest critics are your best inspiration, and so we tried very hard to build a business that can stand the test of time, that has the systems of governance in place that can control what it is that we do. But yeah, along the way, we definitely, when you move into an industry like this, you ruffle a lot of feathers, and we've done that. And we've come up against some real challenging competitors. And I think that, as long as your ethos in your business is that you're operating with integrity, you're doing business as a professional, you can sleep at night knowing that everything that you're doing is to the best of your ability, right and ethical, and guided by your principles, then I don't mind the feathers that I ruffle in that sense. Sure. There's also been a lot of competitors out there who've been nothing but supportive and shown a lot of appreciation and respect and gratitude. And so, it's two sides of the same coin there.
Yeah. And to be on your team through that has got to be one of the most exciting things because you're on the disruption team, right? Yeah. And I got to assume that's been one of the huge rallying cries for your people is like, yeah, we're doing things different and here's our plan.
That's right.
Talk about AI technology. What are you guys doing now and how's that going to impact not just you guys, but the industry?
Surely. I mean, it's huge. And I know everyone says that, and you
for
can't,
sure.
You
and
can't
I hate
turn
the
on a
generic,
podcast.
like, tell me about AI, Steve. But like,
you can't turn on a podcast or go on your Instagram feed without talking about AI right now. And we've really gone down the road in this, and I've learned a ton in the last couple of years as we've been evolving this business. And I see it as the most incredible and exciting opportunity that any business in any vertical can have. And so, we intend to be a disruptor in the AI space today. And we have spent the last year building and implementing a system built on generative AI that we believe is going to fundamentally and has already fundamentally changed the backbone of how the insurance brokerage space works. And similarly to how I built the business in the first place, I came about it honestly. We stumbled into it. And at our scale, we needed to be able to build incredible systems of control that have never been built before. Systems of underwriting the business to ensure that our 1,200 brokers across the country are doing it right 100% of the time, reducing errors and mistakes that would lead to potential E&O exposures or underwriting exposures. And that's incredibly challenging when you've got 1,200 human beings out there moving documents.
Servicing how many customers?
Servicing 500,000 customers across Canada. And so that's a lot of thousands of policies every single day. And so we went down the road, and we also stumbled into this. So we went down the road to build a platform that would help us systemize and underwrite our business. And as we inched along, we started to build it the traditional way. We were developing software, and we stumbled into generative AI. And someone raised their hand and said, I think this might be able to be solved with this. And so we started by trying to solve a small problem, and we used generative AI tools to underwrite complex sets of data that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to programmatically underwrite. And so you'd look at a document that would have a bunch of dysregulated data on it that a human usually has to interpret. And they'd have to ingest all that data and make decisions based on the data. So it's very hard to get a computer programmatically to ingest that data. Yeah. Well, when Gen AI came on the scene, it became much easier for us to interpret those documents digitally and then build if-then statements subject to that interpretation. So we started building that out, and over the course of 6 months, we built an incredible platform that is able to take in all the information that a broker would normally take in their mind and in their expertise and do all of that work for them. And so now we underwrite through the process using generative AI. It's almost like we have a human underwriter standing over the shoulder of every one of our brokers when they write every single policy and hold their hand. And that makes our brokers better. It lets them do what they do best, which is service their clients. And it allows us to do what we need to do, which is get it right 100% of the time. And so this technology has been, other than building this company together as a team, this has been the next most impressive thing we've done. And we know that it is the future for our business. And we think that we can disrupt the entire industry again with this technology.
That's incredible. And again, you stumbled across this.
We stumbled into it, just being persistent
Curious,
problem solvers.
yeah.
Again, and we turned to our core values again. And so one of our core values was that we were innovators and that we were going to solve previously unsolvable problems. And this was a previously unsolvable problem. And we approached it with an optimistic and critical eye, and we came to a real technological solution here.
So like anything new, you probably got a bunch of naysayers and people that are in the industry going, that can't be done, or right. I call bullshit.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
A big part of the challenge I face right now is getting everyone to believe that it works as effectively as it does. Because when you say generative AI, everybody's eyes roll back a little bit. No one really knows what it is. No one really understands what's going on in the background. If you take the time to look under the hood and understand what is going on in the AI space right now with platforms like IBM's Watson or APIing into ChatGPT's tools, you very quickly understand the real capability that's going on here and the opportunity that you have to systematically solve major problems. And so I am on the road demonstrating the technology that we built to our partners and to people around us so that they understand what it is that's being done. And if someone has a question, there's no way it can do that, I show them. Here's how it works. Here's what it does. And so some of the more technologically advanced partners, insurance companies, get it. And we've had some that have lined up and said, wow, this is incredible. It's the best thing we've ever seen. Others don't get it yet. And I know they will over time because they're probably on their own generative AI journeys. Okay. And it's just a little early. Not every CEO understands what this tool is. Everyone's a little afraid of it. How do we control it? What does governance look like? But those answers are out there. And the people that are on the cutting edge right now are answering those questions today. And those that do it first are going to win.
I was just going to say, there's a race to be the first to market that goes to the masses with this. What's that look like if you guys are there, which it sounds like you're on your way?
It is an arms race. You know, why do you think Amazon was the most successful internet retail company? Not because Jeff Bezos was a genius, but because they were there first. He was the first to sell the books. And then he realized, I've got a platform here. Well, now I can sell something else. And then he realized I have a bigger platform here. Now I can distribute for all kinds of businesses. Now I can do Amazon Web Services. They during the dot-com boom, were first to the table, and lo and behold, they're one of the biggest players out there. And this is like the dot-com boom, I think, but on steroids. Because this process and what the generative AI can do for us is going to disrupt every single business, not just the insurance business. I mean, every business out there that uses workflows or technical processes or has complex systems of knowledge that need to be understood is going to be disrupted by this business. So if you do it first, I really believe that you win. And I believe the timeline for that is the next 24 months. It will be I think most of our lives and businesses in the next 5 years are going to represent a sci-fi novel with how fast things are moving. But I really think the disruptors are going to be born in the next 24 months. And if you can be one of those, I think you can really win the day.
That's incredible. Congrats to you and the team for getting there and through the journey.
Yeah, it's been exciting.
Man, that's awesome. How far out do you think? Like, I know you're a big thinker, and I know I've got to know you well enough. I mean, how far down the line, and do you ever have a concern of where the world's going these days?
Well, things are going to change. I have a hard time thinking past 5 years. I always have. Because I know things always change too much that I think it's hubris to think that you can imagine where things are going to be. So I try to keep my own plans to 5 years. And if I look 5 years back, I had very specific plans for how I intended to grow my business. And in fact, I was cleaning last winter. I was cleaning my cupboards, and I found an old journal. And it was from 5 years before, and I had written my business plan in that journal, right up to everything specifically, like right up to monthly numbers, what I was going to do, and I would check in on that every month. How was I doing? Where were things going? And I look back to that original proposal I wrote 5 years ago, and it was on New Year's Eve. Actually, New Year's Eve, I sat alone at home that year, and I made my plan. And then 5 years later, we exceeded everything that I'd written, but it almost to a T came in as I designed it. And so that 5 year plan worked. I think now the 5 year plan is even harder to make because we really don't yet know how this is going to disrupt what we do. So there's a lot of unknowns out there. And I think the business community is going to change, how we see business is going to change, and it's unpredictable. But I want to be on the cutting edge of that.
That process you explained, the 5-year plan, the vision, the literally articulating exactly what you want. How do you teach that to someone? Because I think it's something that people have or they don't. And how do you? Because I'm a believer. It's a thought that then you articulate and formulate and putting it down. And I think if I look back at anything in my life, it was thought before and imagined and said, hey, I think I can do this, and here's the time frame, or here's what it's going to look like detailed out. And it's not like the secret or that kind of mindset, but like, tell me about that. Like, where did you learn it, and how do you teach that to someone else?
I'm not sure where I learned it. I probably learned it just observing the world, observing my dad. I watched him build big things, and I watched him do it not necessarily with a plan. So I think the first thing I would say is you don't know where you're going even if you make a plan. But make the plan anyway, because you want to be aiming at something, and if you land anywhere near it, you're probably going to be a success. And so that plan that I made was very specific, and I landed pretty close, which was probably pretty rare. The next is hold yourself accountable to that plan. And so as I went through that journal of mine through the next 3 years, I had checked in on that plan originally. How am I doing relative to it? What was true? What is true now that wasn't true then? What is false now that wasn't true then? And so I started asking all those questions along the way. And also be very specific with your plans. I see it all the time where someone will put a business plan in front of me or a strategy, and I'll read it, and half the words mean nothing to me. And I'll read, it's fuzzy, and it's non-specific, and it's corporate speak, and it's things, and so I find I ruffle when I'm reading things. If I start reading a paragraph, and in the first 3 sentences I don't understand exactly what every single one of those sentences mean, cut those sentences out, because why are you writing that? What does it mean to do this or to say that? So I like real specifics. And so I keep the pressure on my team for that. When someone puts something in front of me and I read it and I think, what are you really saying here?
Yeah, challenge.
This is a 3-page document. This could probably be a 1-page document. And tell me what it is you're going to do. Because if you get to a North Star like that, and in our business we call them silver bullets. And so when we do our quarterly planning sessions and our annual planning sessions, everyone comes up with great ideas. And they'll have a big plan. I'm going to do this and this and this and this. And then I look at the plan and I think, okay, those are all great strategies, but that one thing right there is going to be the one that is important. And so if you do it all, wonderful. If you do half of it, fine. But if you're going to do only one of the things, do that one. And that becomes our silver bullet. And so we have key priorities and silver bullets. And so we focus on it that way. So it's at all costs, do this one. And if you nail it, do them all. And that gives you a little bit of relief to fail, a little bit of room to fail. And you got to know where to fail. So fail on these ones, don't fail on that one, because that's the thing that's going to drive the success.
That's incredible. How far down do you identify or do you communicate those things with the entire team, as far as like leadership versus, hey, this is where we're going in the next quarter? You talked about town halls.
Yeah, we've had some learning along the way on that. So initially it was probably just, me and Cody involved in those conversations. And then we realized, okay, we need to widen the tent here. And so we brought in the next layer of management and started to make plans together. And then we went through that process and said, we need to widen it more. So we found the bigger we made the tent, the better we got. And so I think it's an old way of business, thinking that you hold on to the secrets, you hold on to information. We're in an era of transparency now. And I think the more that you share about your vision, the more that you share about what you're doing, the more likely you have the more likely you are going to be successful. And I find that being authentic about your successes and failures. So I learned to share the plans, and that was stage 1. But then what I would find was I would share the successes, but I wouldn't share the failures because I didn't want to face them. We blew it on this, so I keep it to myself. I didn't want to let everyone down. And then I realized that sharing the failures was just as important as sharing the successes, because everyone needs to understand you can't hide from your failures. Everyone knows your failures, so you might as well own them.
They're gonna have
you might as well be out there, and then you can own them together, because there are failures as a group. If something has gone wrong in the business, I own it as a CEO and as my vision that's driving things forward. But we all own it together in terms of what we've done right, what we've done wrong. And if we learn from it together, we're going to succeed together. And so we've become more and more transparent as time's gone on now, and I like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think vulnerability, it encourages it from everyone else, saying, hey, I fucked up, I'm human. That's what part of the culture is that we're going to make mistakes, we're going to have misses along the way, and we're going to celebrate the wins. So
that's right. This is a very authentic generation. When I say this, the generation behind me, I would say, is they can sniff out inauthenticity very quickly. And so if you are hiding behind corporate speak, or if you are saying one thing and everyone knows it's not true to have a political win, everyone smells it out really quickly, and they don't tolerate it. And but conversely, they know authenticity when they see it. And so if you speak frankly and speak truly and authentically to your people now, I think that is how you drive success. Otherwise, they won't work with you. They'll go work somewhere else where they feel like they're a part of something they can believe in. That is, I think that's the biggest part of this generation is they don't need to work for you. They can get a job anywhere. It's easy, very easy to get a new job. Yeah. And so if they don't believe in what it is that you're doing, and they don't believe that you have character and integrity, and they don't see your vision, they'll go find someone that will show them that.
Yeah. Wholeheartedly agree. They want to be part of something bigger, even bigger than what you guys are doing. It's like, where are we going and why are we doing this every day?
Yeah.
It's killer. Okay, let's talk about you. What are you doing for free time? I mean, there's a lot of stress that comes with, especially over the last 12 years and doing all this disruption and running a massive company. How do you wind down? What are you doing for self-care?
Yeah, I do a few things. I think I've learned a lot along the way. There was a time when I put the business first. And that sounds maybe like a good ethos as an entrepreneur. I don't think it is. I've learned along the way to put my well-being above all. Because if I'm strong, if I'm healthy, if I'm eating right, if I'm sleeping, if I'm working out, I find that I'm going to perform better in that business. However you want to identify yourself as a CEO, if you're the quarterback or the coach of the team, whatever it is, if I'm not present and performing, then the business suffers. And so for many years, I would work myself to the bone and say, when the business gets here, I'll worry about myself then. Or when I make this much money, then I'll sit back a little bit and take care of myself. Or this turbulent time will be over soon, and I will.
But that's
and
a
then I'll be
never-ending spiral.
It never
right?
ends, and you're always going to be pushing forward. So the principle of putting yourself first was one I earned a number of years ago. And so I'm in the gym. I work out a lot. I like lifting weight. I find that's my I've learned that to be something that really clears my head, relaxes me. I play a bit of golf. I like to ski, and those are the things that keep me going. And I put emphasis on that. Spend time with friends.
That's awesome, man. You're taking good care of yourself. And how old are you?
I'm 42.
42. Yeah, same age. So
yeah,
you look great, man. Tell me about the Big Hearts Foundation you guys created.
Yeah, so the Big Hearts Foundation, we started, I think it's probably 3 or 4 years ago now. And the Big Hearts Foundation is dedicated to raising funds to help vulnerable Canadian children. And so, we were inspired to create this. It was actually, I watched my brother-in-law, Blair Stazer, start a charity called G-Mix Homies with Extra Chromies. And it was a charity.
They've done an incredible job.
It was an incredible
telling
job.
Their story of what they do.
A foundation to support families with with individuals with Down syndrome. And I watched him build this foundation and the incredible impact that he was having on the community. And so that inspired us to build something. We look at this enormous power that we have as a big organization. We need to be turning that power to support our communities. And so my sister, Cindy, is the executive director of our charity. And together we've learned a lot from what Blair's done. And we've built a wonderful charity here where we reach out into our communities and support on a small scale community. So we support Blair's charity. We support Big Brothers and Big Sisters. We support the Boys and Girls Club. And charities we can support in the communities in which we do business. And, we had our Big Hearts Foundation golf tournament just last month. We raised almost $80,000 in one day, and it was an incredible success for us. So something we're really proud of. And similarly, something I want to see scale. How do I make this bigger? How do I make it better? How do we help more people? And that's going to be a fun and exciting path to explore.
And that's in your DNA. So, of course, you're going to scale that thing.
Yeah,
that's incredible. Yeah. And you've got, 87 locations, you said?
That's correct.
How do you manage getting yourself around there? Because I know you show face when you can.
In the early days, it was easy. And in fact, for the first, I would say 400 people in the company, Cody and I personally trained and had lunch with every single one of those employees. That was our routine. And we tried to maintain it. And we said, we're always going to do this because we thought it was purposeful. We'd sit down in a room for a day. We have a day of training or a couple of days of training. We take them up for lunch. We get to know them. And it allowed us to put our thumbprint on everyone in the company. And then enter COVID. Everything changed for the 2 years during COVID. And so we digitized our training platforms. Everybody began to work on some degree remotely. And so that changed a little bit. And at the same time, the company became very large. So it'd be very difficult for me to get out there and visit offices and see people in person. So we do the best we can. Over the last 3 or 4 months, I say I probably visited 20 offices. And so we hit the road, we spend a day, we go speak to people, because I do find that nothing is better for the culture of the company than when we can sit down in a room and have an authentic conversation with our teams.
And are people comfortable in sharing and telling you as it is?
Oh, you'd be shocked. It's wonderful. And I think part of my role is to make people feel comfortable in that. So whenever I go into those environments, I try to create a safe space where you can say, what is the thing that bothers you about this company the most? What is the last decision we made that pissed you off or that you thought was wrong? And so you start to get some dialogue, and it's one of two things. It's either we were wrong and it was dumb, or we need to just explain ourselves and say, look, this is why we made these decisions. This is where the company's going. This is why that decision that seems to have this consequence also has this consequence. And so, what you discover is there's an incredibly large number of brilliant people within the company who have ideas and thoughts that you've never thought of before. So every time I walk out of one of those meetings, I come home, I actually keep a list on my phone in the meeting. I have to apologize saying, guys, I'm not texting my friends here. I'm sending emails to our team right now as you say these things to me, because how did we not think of that? And it makes the company better. And if that one employee is facing that problem once, that means it's being faced 1,000 times every day. And so if we can fix that, think of the return on the ROI on
for
our
them
time,
and for you,
for them and us and the business.
Yeah, exactly. That's incredible. I love it. And I think it's just as easy to not do that and have your team run the company and do that. But I mean, again, kudos to take the time and effort and to show people you and that you care and you give a shit and you're there for them. That's awesome. Advice you would give to a young entrepreneur. Go back to your first year 12 years ago. What would you share with someone that's grinding it out?
Well, I think there's probably a couple things there. What would I tell myself if I was 30 and I was
next question.
Starting this thing? What advice would I give?
You tell 30-year-old Steve.
Put yourself first. I think I learned that. I didn't know it when I was 30, so I spent probably most of my 30s just kind of killing myself and not taking care of myself. And so take care of your well-being first. Number two is think big, which is our slogan, and I mean that quite seriously, is imagine where you want this thing to go and what the possibilities are. Because if you imagine where it's going to end up, then that's going to change how you approach what you're doing today. And if you're just lumbering forward, hoping that you're going to get somewhere, that's one way to get somewhere. But if you really want to get somewhere, have a plan and make it a big one. And one adage that inspired me very early on, and this was, I believe it was Peter Thiel that came up with this one, and that is ask yourself what you want to achieve in 5 years. And once you've asked yourself that, ask yourself why you can't do it in 1. And that one really stuck with me, and that actually really accelerated the growth of our company, because when you say to yourself, okay, in 5 years I want to have 300 employees and I want to have this much revenue and et cetera, then you say to yourself, okay, well, why don't I have 300 employees in 1 year? Well, that's an interesting question, but when you start to ask yourself that question, you start to pick apart why. Okay, well, how do I attract 300 people in 1 year? Well, I better have a pretty good value proposition that attracts those employees. Well, it's going to take a lot of money to do that. Well, where can I get that money? And you start to proactively find those solutions. And so maybe you're not able to achieve everything in the 1 year, but what you start to do is refine your plan to make it even more efficient. And you realize that maybe what seemed like an impossible obstacle isn't an impossible obstacle, it's just an improbable obstacle. And so you start to accelerate those movements, and that really was one of the accelerators that inspired me to move this business forward, and it worked.
Brilliant advice. I'm taking notes. What are you most excited about for the next few years for you?
I'm most excited about disrupting again. And we have, as I shared, really gone deep into what AI can do for our business. And it does feel like the game is about to change. And so if I was ever, I've been at this 12 years now, if I was ever tired of the old game, I think the old game's coming to an end. And so, watching our people get excited about this new idea, watching us create new technologies that have never been invented before, that's getting me fired up. And I think for me, it's going to give me the juice I need to look ahead for the next 5 years as to what's possible here, and re-energize myself. I mean, I'm still a pretty young man, and so re-energize myself to what I can do here in the next 5.
Yeah, you got some runway left, brother.
Yeah, I got a little bit.
That's incredible. Left, yeah. Thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciated it. It's been a pleasure to watch your journey in the time that we've known each other. Again, you're an incredible, authentic human. Your team's lucky to have you, and I appreciate all the advice and great experience you shared today. So thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you.
It was awesome.
Thanks for popping my podcast, Cherry. That was the first one for me, and
my pleasure.
I was honored to be invited. So thank you.
Awesome. All right, man.
Good stuff.
Thanks.